You're welcome back to the Pulse. And just before the break, I was telling you about Ghana's contributions and efforts at helping in dealing with the crisis in Somalia. We're learning that for the past 6 months to 1 year, it's been difficult for boots on the ground to deal with the constant threat of militia actions in that part of the African continent. My colleague Derek Ekosam has just returned from Somalia to get a first-hand understanding of what the problem is and what the AU's peacekeeping force and mission is doing to help with these efforts. He joins me now in the studio. He's back, and I'm glad to say he's back safe and sound, joining us here in Accra. Good afternoon to you, Derek.
Good afternoon,
welcome
Francis.
back from Somalia. How was the trip?
It was tiring. Let me start from when I had the call that I had to go to Somalia. So the first call was a call. It was late in the night, one Tuesday evening. I had a call. I called, do you have a passport? I'm like, yes, I have a passport. Then the next question is, do you want to go to Somalia? Then I'm like, what is happening there? Oh, there's this thing I want you to work on. I'm like, fine, no problem, let's go. So I spoke to my dad. Initially, he was apprehensive. You know, I'm his only son. He didn't want to risk it.
Okay.
But I had to speak to him, and then he allowed me to go. We left Accra on Saturday, did Addis Ababa, did Nairobi. So we slept over at Nairobi because we got there on Sunday at dawn, and then we went to Somalia. The moment the plane landed, I'm like, God, what is this?
But again, Eko, we will do the backstory to your experience being in Somalia, and I can see the pictures on our screens right now. You clearly had a good time with all these officials and smiling and taking pictures with them, but it was because of a certain challenge we have in that part of the country. That's why you went there, to understand what the challenge is. How bad is it for people in Somalia and the challenges they are having with the crisis?
It's very bad. The people are impoverished. It's a wrecked town, rocked by war. You realize that the town is in a bad shape. Roads are bad. You'll have to use a very good vehicle. And for most of the time, we traveled in armored vehicles. You realize that there's no source of living there. There's nothing you can do to earn some money, except you want to stay around the airport and help cart goods that people are traveling with. Then you can earn some money.
And you mean the airport at Mogadishu?
Yes, the airport at Mogadishu. There's another story to that one. We'll also speak about that later. But living in Somalia, it's hell, if I can say that.
Call it hell, right?
Yeah, for the 5 days that we were there, we realized it wasn't easy. Francis, imagine walking around every time with your armor and the crash helmet on you every time. Even when you want to visit the washroom, you still have to go with it.
You mean the bulletproof
the
vest?
bulletproof vest
and all the
of
other
that. Yes, because you were told that you could be hit by a stray bullet at any time. And even as of now, they tell us Mogadishu was safer now. Imagine going there 2 years ago, would have been worse off.
Okay, so, sorry, just for those who are following this conversation and are saying, what's happening in Somalia? Why are we seeing a lot of talk about it? Remind us again of what has led to the crisis that Somalia is facing right now.
For the past 25 years, the country has been at war. It's been fighting it. There's been infighting from amongst the people. And then it has also had its fair share of militant attacks. Al-Shabaab, we all know. But apart from the Al-Shabaab, there are also other things that go against the country. For example, there's something they call the 4.5 system. There are 4 major clans in there, and the lesser ones have been classified into the 0.5, making it 4.5. If you want to bring out somebody to rule, you need to make sure you satisfy all the clans. And so if I want to pick you, Francis, you are from clan A. Everybody else from the other 3 clans, including the 0.5, will have to accept you. If they don't accept you, you can't rule.
Okay.
And so before you come up with any idea, before you implement any policy, the clans will have to accept that is what you want to do, else nothing else works.
Okay.
So they have army generals who have not been through any military training, but because they are heads of those clans, they are bigwigs in those clans, they have been made to rule. And when you speak to the people, they tell you it is a bane to their development, because you want to implement policies, but you have to satisfy other people before you can get things done. And what happens is that you will not get the right people in there. For the past 25 years, they've not had a direct system of voting. One man, one vote has eluded them for the past 25 years. What they do was an indirect system of voting where the president is selected from among the clans. In August, they'll go to the polls. It will be another indirect system of voting to elect whoever leads them. But even in the midst of all that, they still see light at the end of the tunnel. AMISOM, the African Union Mission in Somalia, together with UNSOM, United Nations Mission in Somalia, are doing a great job. They have a lot of troops over there. They have policemen, they have military men and women. They're helping to keep the peace. But these same people will tell you it's not easy. every now and then when you're walking through the town, for us, we're not allowed to mingle with the people because they told us you could be hit at any time. And so even when we realized we were still in a comfort zone, we still had to put on our armor and our crash helmet to avoid being hit. One good thing they are doing is that they are training indigents from the town to take up the processes because UNSOM, AMISOM know that they can't be there forever. And even the president of Somalia said that when he was delivering the AU address. He knows that people cannot be there forever. And so he's also asking them to train Somalis to take up the challenge. We were in Kismayo on Monday. Kismayo is also one of the towns that the Al-Shabaab militant groups attack most of the time. They have this mortar bullets, they fly around, and for the past 6 months, they've flown at least 8 of them to that side. I get the sense that if they're able to capture Kismayo, then they'll be making inroads and headways into the town. Mogadishu is safe, but it's not as safe as we have been made to believe.
Okay.
The stories we hear from town that it's a dangerous place. It really is a dangerous place.
How bad is it?
Very bad. Francis, imagine going to the washroom, as I said earlier, with your armors and all of that. It tells you how bad it is. When we went there, I wanted to do stories from town, speak to people about how bad the situation is. I was told we can't allow you in there. Your life is at stake. They have a national stadium that has now been taken over by the military and by the policemen. It means that the Somali national team has to play its home matches from Ethiopia, which is about 4 hours away from Somalia.
4-hour drive or?
4 hours via air.
By air.
If you're driving, you do like 8 hours. So that's how far Ethiopia is from Somalia. Even that you have to do Wajer, do Nairobi before you do Addis Ababa. And in Wajer, anytime you're flying from Somalia to Nairobi, you have to make a first stop at Wajer. And between the first checkpoint at the Somalian airport towards when you exit and sit in the plane, you have 11 checkpoints.
11 checkpoints.
11 checkpoints.
And at each checkpoint, what happens?
You take off your watch, take off everything on you, take off your wallet, take off your belt, take off your shoes. You walk barefooted. Then you go through the machines. Everything of yours has to be scanned. Your bags and everything. You bring everything in your bag out. And you have to do that 11 times. The same routine 11 times. Even when you have your passports to prove that you are not from here and that you have come here on an AMISOM or UNSOM machine, you still have to go through that. So you go through that 11 checkpoints, and then you are flown in the air. You have to land in Wajer, which is in northern Kenya. You have to go through another 3 checkpoints in Wajer before you are allowed to go on board the plane again and take you to Nairobi. You get to Nairobi, 2 other checkpoints. So between Somalia and Nairobi, that is 15 checkpoints before you get to Addis Ababa. So imagine what the footballers will have to go through if they want to play their games in Addis Ababa. The roads are bad. Buildings have been wrecked. You walk through the town, what we call potholes here, in Somalia, they would qualify for first-class roads. The situation is bad. Even in the armored vehicles, you could feel yourself swaying left and right, hitting the potholes here and there. Even in the armor, and the armor is very heavy. It's 10 kilos. So imagine having 10 kilos on you every single step you take. Because they tell you, put it on, you don't know when you'll be hit. So be safe, be safe, be safe. During the AU Day celebration, one thing ran through: the Africa we want. According to them, they would want an Africa full of peace, an Africa they can relate to, an Africa that has no insurgent attacks. They are working towards that. UNSOM, AMISOM, doing a fabulous job to combat the Al-Shabaab militant groups.
Okay, Echo. And this is just a man who's been in this country for just 1 week. You can imagine, for those who've been there on these peacekeeping missions for well over 20 years, trying to restore calm and peace in a war-torn country like Somalia. Echo, let's narrow it down to the Ghanaian connection. We know that for Ghana, we are contributing some troops in Somalia in helping bring peace to that country. What are we doing in that regard?
There are about 26 Ghanaian police and military men in there, and women as well. We have 2 military officers and then 24 police men and women. The leader of the AMISOM training group is a Ghanaian. ACP Francis Aite. He's training them. When we went to Kismayo on Monday, we have the visuals, you could see them rolling. About 200 policemen who have been trained, they are indigents from Somalia. They have been trained to start a process that would ensure that Somalis take up the challenge themselves. The person who trained all these people is a Ghanaian. Now, these people have to go through a vetting process to qualify to go through this training process. Okay. There's a lady who does that, ASP Lydia Otunyakun. She does that. The person who drives the PC, the police commander for the entire AMISOM peacekeeping mission in Somalia, is a Ghanaian. The Ghanaians are doing a lot. They are really doing a lot. And when we went there, I've never seen men in uniform and boots being so friendly like they were to us in Somalia. Once they realized Ghanaians had come in, they welcomed us, they sat with us, we had a nice discussion, and they have a depth of knowledge about what is going on in Somalia. They tell you they have done their part, but a lot also depends on the people in the town. The 4.5 clan system, it's actually an albatross around the necks of the Somalis. They admit that, but they tell you, we've been practicing this for long. As of now, they tell me that what they need is a leader who will be strong enough to abolish this system.
Okay.
I've been speaking to the spokesperson for the mayor of the town, Abdul Fattah Umar Halani. He tells me what they would want to do to ensure that Al-Shabaab is extinct from the town. We can watch that interview.
Al-Shabaab way baaba'een. Al-Shabaab waqtigoodii waa dhammaaday. Al-Shabaab dawladdu in badan.
Al-Shabaab are on the run. Government they gave them a lot of opportunities, but they refuse it. It is them who refuse it. Now they don't control any mentionable area. They are in the hiding. They are on the run. We wish if they would have some kind of agreement, but never. We will not have to negotiate now. We closed the doors of negotiation with the terrorists because they don't have Somali agenda. They don't have agenda for the Somali people, and they are in the hiding. How can you negotiate with someone that you cannot see, who hides his face, who have no any regulation?
Laga saaraya deegaanadii ay ku hareen inta yar oo hartayna dawladdu way cirib tiraysaa wax heshiisana lama galayso.
Right then, so let's now talk about something else. Still to do with Somalia and the experience that my colleague Derek Akosam has had, what he's seen with his very own eyes at first hand in that country. Derek, let's talk about people like you in Somalia, journalists in Somalia. Is it easy for them to cover the real human stories that we get to do easily here in Ghana?
No, it's not easy. Even for us, foreigners, who thought that we'll be accorded that form of respect, we'll be granted interviews freely. Yeah. We had to go through a tough time getting interviews done. But for AMISOM, we wouldn't have had any officials to speak to. There's this story I did on Tuesday about Mohamed Mwalimu. Sorry, he's now been elected the Secretary General of the National Association of Somali Journalists, National NUSOJ. Just a month ago, he nearly died. He was about to enter his vehicle when the vehicle exploded. He has scars on his face. He tells me anytime he looks in the mirror, he sees these scars. The scars remind him of what would have happened to him. And for him, that is the urge he has now to go through the days and ensure that peace returns to Somalia. We could watch that story.
Living here as a journalist in Somalia is life and death.
From near death to elevation, that's the story of Mohamed Mwalimu. The former BBC and Reuters Somalia correspondent was attacked and nearly killed at the Lido restaurant in the capital, Mogadishu, a month ago. His car was bombed as he tried exiting the hotel. He tells me the scars on his face constantly remind him of the incident, while the mere thought of what happened that day sends shivers down his spine. But that will not stop him from realizing his dreams. He has resolved to do everything possible to ensure peace returns to Somalia despite the odds.
Really, what we are going to living here as a journalist in Somalia is life and death. So you can survive from those, and people, there are journalists who survive from those as are still working this hardship, and still there are some people who suffered or fled from their country due to security, and they are now living in the neighboring countries like Kenya, Ethiopia, and elsewhere because of security. But we journalists, we are going to have a safe environment, and that's why we are lobbying for in the future to have a better environment that journalists can work freely.
He has just been elected Secretary General of the National Union of Somali Journalists, NUSOJ. He says this means more work because he believes as journalists, the stories they tell can either aid or hamper the peace process.
Earlier, when we had a government, people used it to go across the country, exchange ideas, and since when the government collapsed, the people divided into clans, and everybody was in his clan. So now, even the interaction of the people was very difficult. So now, when people came together, like the journalists, we think that they are now can become a role model for the Somali people because they came together, sat down together, and negotiated, and then finally chosen a leadership without corruption, without doing anything. So that's the way we wanted that all Somali become in the future.
About 40 journalists have been killed since 2014. But that, according to Mohamed Mwalimu, will not deter him from fishing for information and telling the story of a developing nation rocked and wrecked by war. Derek Akol-Sam, Joy News, Mogadishu, Somalia.
And quite a difficult story. And even for me as a journalist, watching him telling his experience, having those cuts all in the line of duty means a lot for the kind of job we do in telling stories about people, not just in Ghana, but across the globe in countries like Somalia. Derek, difficult. Even for you, seeing it yourself, I can imagine what the feeling was like. We'll come to your personal experience being there and the things you saw, but do you see an end in sight for these people based on what you saw in Somalia?
I see an end in sight, but there are two things they will have to do. First of all, they will have to do away with the clan system and look for a more united way, a democratic way of ruling the people. As of now, what they need is a leader who would say that, let's push the clan system aside. First of all, think of yourself first as a Somali before you think of yourself as belonging to any of the clans. That's the first point. The second point is that they need to take out Al-Shabaab. And in doing so, there are three things they need to look out for. They need to look out for why people are joining Al-Shabaab, the source of funding, and then why Al-Shabaab exists and why they do what they do. From my interaction with the people in high places, they tell me that Al-Shabaab is an Islamic militant group that wants to implement the Sharia law in Somalia. But then again, you don't kill the same people you want to rule over. So they need to put an end to that. And I was also told that Al-Shabaab is thriving because there are Somalis who are funding Al-Shabaab. There are people who deal in guns and artillery and ammunition who get money from the sale of these things. And so they push Al-Shabaab. There's this man we spoke to who didn't want to go on record, but he told me he used to be a very wealthy man. Within a year, he had lost all his wealth because the Al-Shabaab will come to him to pay tax to support them because he's a Muslim. And once he refuses, they tag him. They start destroying his properties. If he doesn't, they feel it's on the part of government. So he's torn between the two sides. And even when he's still in the middle, he's lost all his wealth. There's an end in sight. Amisom doing a fabulous job there. Unsom as well. But
it will be difficult.
It will be difficult.
Okay, Derek, at this point, let's talk about you. And the conditions you're living in Ghana, had to go to Somalia for a week. What was the living experience like?
Well, for nutrition, I think I was well fed. I really ate a lot. But the other side is when I had to put on the armor, the bulletproof vest, and then the combat helmet. And when we landed in Somalia on Sunday, that was the first thing that was given to us. This is for you, put it on wherever you go. And it's 10 kilos, and so it impedes your process. You want to move faster, and there's this thing on. You can't even run. If you want to run, we have to run with all of that. Not being able to mingle with the people because you don't know who might attack you. And we were told that once they realize you're a foreigner, it means that it's either you belong to the government or you belong to the Al-Shabaab movement. And so you were a target. So
on both sides?
On both sides. You can't mingle freely. I didn't get to mingle with the people. Our worst night was on Tuesday. There's this thing called the night patrol that the police forces do every time, the FPU. They do that every evening from 7 to 10. So we were taken to their camp at the stadium. We were well fed. And then the commander comes in. The first thing he says, you've been well fed. You're happy. But bear in mind that as you go out, you can't be killed at any time. You have to be very cautious when you're walking.
And that is trying to mimic him.
Trying to mimic him, yes. So, and we all got scared, like, then let's go back to the hotel. They said, no, you need to get through this experience. It's a stop and search process. The Somalis comply, but there are recalcitrant drivers who would not comply with the law. And for these people, they are just beaten, and then you are put in your car, and then you drive away. Even in the armored vehicles through the night, we were scared. Our hearts were in our mouths, so we got to our hotel. The only time we felt we were safe was when we were in our hotel. And even with that, we felt safe because the militant groups cannot fire from the air. They fire from the ground. And we were in a hotel with a very high wall, strict security presence, and there are sandbags all around. In Somalia, sandbags are very common in Mogadishu, especially for the military forces.
How important is it?
It's very thick, and so the bullets cannot fly through. And so even if they want to shoot, they can't shoot that far unless they try shooting through the air like a rocket shot, then it would land. One Ghanaian squadron leader, Isaac Opon, told me about 3 weeks ago, one mortar bomb fell in front of his room. He was lucky he wasn't in the room at that time. So when it exploded, he wasn't around. He would have lost his life by now. It was a terrible experience. The flight from Addis Ababa to Accra is the longest flight I've ever been on. It was just 5 hours, but I couldn't wait to touch down in Accra.
The memories.
Yes, the memories would always be with me. War isn't a good thing. It's not anything you should ever wish for. Because for every 2 meters, you'll be checked. You
2 meters?
Every 2 meters, you are checked.
So what? That's 2 steps?
Yes. 1, 2. Hey, come. Bring your phone. Everything. They check you. Move. Hey, come. Who are these people? Where are they from? Even with the passports, show that you are from Ghana. So what? We still have to check you. There are very dangerous people here.
And that was your life?
Yeah.
For what, 5 days?
For 5 days.
Okay. All right. This is something good to hear in terms of understanding how life is in certain parts of the world. Maybe here in Ghana, you may take it for granted, but in certain parts of the world, walking freely on the street is a privilege. It's not just something you can easily do and walk away with it. It's something that is very, very precious. I'm sure for those in Somalia, if they come to Ghana and they walk on the streets of, say, Osu or even Kokomlemle for an hour, it's something they will live with for a very, very long time. But thank you, Derek, for sharing your experience with us here on the program. I'm sure for many who've watched, they have their own thoughts that they have. You can feel free to share them on our platforms on social media at Joy News on TV on Twitter and at Joy News on Facebook. We'll go for a break at this time. We'll come back and bring you sports here on the Pulse. Stay with us.